Well, it was the safest area in Little Rock, in all honesty. I mean, there was no crime because there was nothing here. There was a Pabst distributorship here. This building was unoccupied and was falling down, they thought. There were a couple of other small businesses. No one was down here. There was nothing down here at all.
Yeah. It's largely vacant. As they say, you could shoot a cannon down the street and not bother anyone.
Jimmy's first love and only love is doing this sort of thing, and then he had to have some way to support his wife and children, so he got a job. But
that's true.
you know, basically that's the way it worked.
Mark,
Wally, and you had this great vision of what Little Rock was going to be. And they had, what, 13 proposals?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're exactly what we've done now. Downtown library, River Market, an arena downtown. I mean, you know, everything that, if you look at the proposals, everything was there, except we went from the era of Everett Tucker's and Raymond Rebsamen saying, we're going to do this and doing it, to you needed a lot of community involvement. So the three of them went around with this great idea, and by the time everybody got through saying, I'll approve it or I'll support it, but you got to hang this extra ornament on the tree, the vote came through and everything was defeated. Yeah. And not a little bit, killed.
The largest special election turnout, still to this day, over 45,000 people voted in '92. And Dean's right, we had, I think, 12 or 13 initiatives, including arena and convention center and police and fire, better streets, you name it, improvements to the zoo. But by the nature of the process, it all went down. We failed on every count.
Then went through Future Little Rock, and that's where I got drafted. And I was put in charge of, there was all these different groups that studied different parts, you know, transportation and business, and I was the image and community enhancement director, which was basically how do you make downtown work? I mean, that was what we did. So we spent 2 years doing that. The farmer's market was on 7th Street in the parking deck. And Jimmy went and said, why don't you put in there to bring it downtown someplace? And so they said we'd put $500,000 into it. We went to different markets in Nashville and Roanoke and different places like that. And Rick did this great imaginative drawing on what we should have here. And what we planned to do initially was just put 2 sheds in the back.
We had looked at the Pike's Place Market in Seattle in the early '80s. And I fell in love with that personally and told my wife on the trip back that someday we ought to build something like that downtown Little Rock, because farmers market worked, and that's something that could work maybe on a much greater scale than our modest on the street market did in the 70s and 80s. It made sense to us that we might site eventually our public market adjacent to our waterfront, the river, and let it be a catalyst to generate a new urban neighborhood. And so we were really interested in bringing back the heart and soul of our city, and tomatoes seemed like the perfect way to do it.
First of all, we showed people what we wanted to do, and we had no source of income. We had no way of doing it, and I had then been appointed to the board, and the people in charge at that time said, no, you're not going to do it, but you know, this is crazy. The other two people that ought to be sitting up here are Cy Carney and Rick Redden, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I mean, you know, Cy basically said, you know, we can pull this off. The other person without his help, nothing would have happened is George Campbell. We figured that it was a $4.3 million project.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think it went over 5 when all complete.
And we had no way of doing it, so we went out and started soliciting money. And George said that he would be the banker. He would take our pledges and forward us the money from the facilities board. I mean, he just believed in what we were doing and believed in what was happening, and so we went around and got money. I mean, we just asked people for pledges over a 3 or 4 year period of time, and they did.
In that era, the banks were still largely locally owned, and the boards were local leadership, and they'd kind of look at us and say, you know, we love to pat you on the back, but we're not sure we want to help you financially when we're not sure if downtown Little Rock is going to be saved at all. So I think it was just a lack of confidence.
Or should be saved.
Yeah, or should be saved. You know, at that time, I think the vision that we had was more limited than what's actually occurred, but we alluded to the potential of something much greater could come out of creating something special like a public market hall and a permanent location for the farmers market.
We came to one meeting and Rick came in and said, the kiosk, we weren't gonna, he said, we're over a little bit our budget and we're gonna have to take something out. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And said that he thought the thing we ought to take out was the kiosk outside. We said, no, well, we think we need to do it. And we went to the Ottenheimer Fund and said, you know, this is where we are, and we think, you know, at this point in time, something was going to be built, and obviously. And they said, okay, and they gave us $250,000 as a pledge, and so we got to finish out. I mean, we did a lot. Listen, we did a lot of things that were absolutely crazy and wrong. I mean, Rick was a great architect, but none of us had ever built this sort of building. And we'd have about 1/10 the storage we need. We had one set of bathrooms for the place. I mean, there's all sorts of things that, in retrospective, we'd had. But it was a real adventure. I mean, it was this radical design. It was this. I mean, it was a pretty wild time.
We're not sure what kind of reception we were really going to get, and you're right. It opened on a Saturday morning, basically the 4th of July of '96, and about 7:30, my phone rang, and Johnny Holcomb, who was a community leader, worked at Stevens, deceased now, wonderful lady, called and said, Jimmy, I am driving to the airport. There's a traffic jam at the corner of Cumberland and Markham Street, and people are pouring into the new River Market. And I said, are you telling me the truth? She said, you won't believe it. You need to get down here immediately. So we were down there in 30 minutes, and sure enough, there were throngs of people here. There was a level of excitement and energy unlike anything since or before, really, I think. I think of when the Clinton Library opened, there was that same kind of excitement and enthusiasm. But you have to remember, in 1996, we had spent 15 long years in decline, or maybe even more. And Saturday in downtown Little Rock, only the rats and rodents were out. So on this particular Saturday, and quite frankly, every Saturday since, everything changed here. And it was really, I don't think you can underscore enough how important that was to this community, that we had finally put not just a spark, but I would say we lit a pretty good fire. And the market really was the heart and soul. It really did touch people. And from that, gosh, a lot of great things have happened.
We as a community need to be constantly saying, how can we make the River Market better and this area better to make our community better? And a lot of times, we're very satisfied with where we are, and we shouldn't be. We ought to be saying, we can be better, we should be better, we can be better, and how can we do it? And that's what we need to be doing.
But we know that it needs to evolve and change and continue to be organic. And I think that's exciting too. So we'll maybe look back another 20 years, it'll change a lot. The two of us probably won't be around, but it'll be interesting to see what the next generation does with it and how it continues to make our city a better place to live.